Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast. This is the only Amazon FBA-focused podcast with two hosts that share the same name. And today, again, with me, it is my adroit co-host, Chris Rasick. And we've got a mixed bag of topics to cover this week, including Amazon Masterminds. We're going to talk about bottlenecks a little bit, and we're also going to talk about learning new skills because we always want to keep that sword sharp. But there is a right way and a wrong way to learn a new skill. But first, we should talk a little bit about news. And this week's news segment actually comes from a brand new Amazon newsletter that's going to go out for the first time on Tuesday. It is Chris's newsletter called Forever Saturday. If you're not signed up, there's going to be a link tree down below this episode in the show notes where you can sign up. I would suggest you hop on it. I was lucky enough to have a first glance, and the writing is superb. So I would definitely suggest you hop on that. So, Chris, what's the news this week?
Yeah, I started a newsletter because I have a face for blogging, I'm told. So. That's why I'm starting that venture. I found a nugget from, and I'm not familiar with this company, Forrester.com. Mm-hmm. But they released some research on the retail sector, specifically online retail sales. And some interesting stats came in, and starting with in 2021, U.S. total retail sales. Now, this is excluding automotive and gasoline sales. But U.S. total retail sales reached a record high of $4.3 trillion.
That's nuts.
All of these numbers are staggering if you really digest them. Now, by 2027, Forrester expects total U.S. retail sales to reach $5.5 trillion. And then here's the juicy part: U.S. online retail sales to reach $1.6 trillion. They expect online retail sales to grow at about a 10% compounded annual growth rate. And over the next 5 years, it's going to account for 30% of the market by 2027, which is interesting, and that's, these habits and these tendencies that were unlocked and kind of accelerated by the pandemic, they're really not slowing down. So mm-hmm. It's really kind of steamrolling or maybe snowballing from where we started. Not that there wasn't growth before the pandemic as well, but that brought online sales into so many people's wheelhouse. So in 2022, Forrester expects U.S. online retail sales to exceed $1 trillion. And then this, one of my favorite segments of selling on Amazon, they anticipated that BOPUS, which, if you're not familiar, is buy online, pick up in store. They anticipate BOPUS transactions to hit $100 billion this year. And then the expectation is it'll reach $200 billion by 2027, which that part is insane to me. There was actually, and if you read it, we can have a link to it. I'll have a link to it in my newsletter if you sign up for that. If you dig into the report, it actually has some data on how a healthy portion of consumers prefer BOPUS over delivery, which I found particularly interesting. Yeah.
So I want to buy online, and I don't want to go into the store, but I do want to drive over to the store to pick up my stuff. And it's kind of a quandary to figure out how that works.
Well, they probably got our podcast going, and they don't have headphones, so they just sit in the car, keep the podcast rolling, and have somebody bring it out to them.
That's fair. That's fair. Those numbers. I mean, I know how big the like the GDP is, how big our economy is, but those numbers still just, they're nuts to me. You know, every now and again you see a video maybe on I don't know, Instagram or Twitter, where they show like how much money something is, and they compare it to like the size, if you stack hundreds, how big it would be compared to the size of like the Sears Tower or something.
Right.
4.3 trillion has got to be 10 or 20 of those. I mean, it's a ton of cash. But that's I don't know. That's nuts.
You could probably bump the Webb telescope off its course if you stacked it all
up. And the growth at 10%. I mean, companies doing, I don't know, $500 million a year, or the size of Amazon. 10% growth would send the price of their stock through the roof. So, I mean, that's, I am bullish on e-commerce, but this, I mean, every time we talk about numbers like this, it always just kind of backs that up a little bit. And so I think that's good for the future of, us resellers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to, we've got several points today, and the first one I want to bring up is Amazon Masterminds. I want to talk about this for a couple of reasons, but I mean, one, I run one of these, and we've got a Q4 coming up. I'm going to run a Q4 Mastermind as well, but this is not going to be a totally selfish segment here. But I think there are some rules that need to be laid down, or some guidelines that people need to follow, because what I'll see, especially coming out of like one of the live OA challenges, is people are like, oh, I really want to start a mastermind. I want to be in a mastermind. And then I notice that 6 weeks later, those masterminds that get started up, they've fizzled out, or they've gone away. And, it's just the way things happen. But I mean, I am a big fan of masterminds for a couple of reasons. One, some of the best things I've ever done have come from tossing ideas around with people. This podcast has come from tossing around ideas with you. Some of the things that I've built extension wise and things like that have come from tossing ideas around with friends who, I would consider a mastermind with me now. But I think that there needs to be some rules that you follow when it comes to mastermind. And so I figured we could talk about kind of the different setups, and then maybe even talk about what can make a make or break mastermind. I know you run two as well, and I kind of like the way that you do it. I know one is not paid and one is paid. So I know that, first of all, there can be loose and informal, and those are fine. Have a couple of people who you've hit it off with in a Facebook group, or maybe you know each other locally, or whatever it is. And maybe you have a Facebook chat or a Slack channel, or maybe even start a small Facebook group. It's free, and just some friends finding a virtual water cooler and shooting the shit, and that's fine. Okay. And usually you'd want to make sure it's around the same interest. So if it's business, make sure everyone is business minded. Maybe you want to have a mastermind about fantasy football, which is top of mind because we're going to be getting into that here pretty soon. And these kinds are fine, but I find that they're not always the most productive. Something that starts out as really business focused can quickly devolve into a stream of memes and shit posting. I know that from some chats that I've been in and even left, because eventually it got to the point where I was like, well, we're not really bringing value to each other. But yes, I do love a good meme, but it's not where I wanted to be. They can be great. Okay, but it's hard. All right. The next one is structured but free, and I know that your Bopus Mastermind is like this. When you set it up, it's free. I know some that are either very inexpensive. I know some that maybe just have like here's $20 to get in, and it's just kind of to keep tire kickers out. But there are rules. Someone is typically in charge or the head of it, and there's structure and guidelines that need to be adhered to. What are the rules that you put in place for like the Bopus Mastermind?
Yeah, so the Bopus Mastermind, we capped it at just 5 members,
Mm-hmm.
and we meet every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. We do a Zoom call, and attendance is mandatory. And I even set up, I think I forget what the evaluation. It hasn't been an issue, so I've forgotten some of the details on the rules. But essentially, I have evaluation periods where if you miss 2 meetings out of the last 5 or 6 or something, then we need to have a private talk about your ongoing membership. And then they also have to share $50 worth of profit every week. So, and that's based on the purchase of 5 units. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
you need to get about $10 worth of profit, however many items that takes you. And then we have a separate channel where the leads go in. Just keep that clean, make sure everyone can get to the leads. Not have to sort through a bunch of chatter. But yeah, but that's basically it. It was interesting. We crossed over a year back in July. So
Nice.
we've been doing it, every single Monday. I think we could probably still count on one hand the amount of times that we've skipped a Monday meeting. But yeah, we get together, and I tried to keep the meetings. It was funny when I was setting it up. I didn't want to make it too big of a commitment, so I told him stay for 45 minutes. I had a whole structure of how the meeting was going to go, and anytime after the 45-minute mark, if you need to drop off, go ahead. So I was trying to be real unassuming with it. Now every single meeting is at least 90 minutes, with most of them running 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And they're like pretty much almost fully unstructured now. It's, you spend that much time with people, and you see them every single week. It's more than I see some of my good friends, so
Mm-hmm.
you certainly get to know people. You get a level of familiarity and friendship going on, so we can basically just kind of fire up our webcams and chat, and we can just kind of crowdsource, issues that we're having, and, or whatever, we'll talk about leads, we'll talk about stores, current events, or current conspiracies on, what we think Amazon may or may not be doing to us. But, it's been extremely productive, because there's such a good mix of sellers in it.
Mm-hmm.
I made, when I first started out, I made everyone set a goal for the week. And, with the idea of, you have to say it in front of 4 of your peers. And then I would write them down. And the next week I would ask you about them. And you would either have to admit, hey, yeah, I accomplished my goal, or I fell short. And you'd have to admit that in front of 4 of your peers again. So there was, I felt that built kind of a little bit of accountability into it.
Absolutely.
And we're a little bit looser with that. It's kind of, I don't write them down, but we do talk about what we want to do, or, what we've gotten away from that we need to start doing more of. And, but there are a couple pretty heavy hitters as far as sellers go. There's, maybe one in the middle, and then, a couple who are still growing, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a good mix, and it's, what I liked about it is that even the smaller sellers, which, when a year ago when I started, I was certainly classified in that category. I had fresh eyes on things, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a way of looking at things that maybe, the 10-year grizzled vet who ships every single day and is putting up well into the 5 figures every single month. Maybe it was perspectives or processes or ideas that had long escaped him. So it's it's just a good mix. I like it's been great. Like I love it.
I think that really is kind of important. Is sometimes masterminds can be exclusionary, which I get. I know that sometimes there needs to be a hurdle, to get over to get into a mastermind, but a lot of times that does preclude people who may be able to bring that fresh set of eyes, which can be really, really helpful. Or maybe the better term is, bring a set of eyes that is maybe less cynical because they haven't been in the game for so long,
Right.
which tends to happen.
Sure.
But yeah, I do really like what you've done with that. I do peek in every now and again. I don't lurk too much, but I like to peek in every now and again and just check in and see what you guys have been talking about. So, but yeah, so that one's structured but free, and then finally there is paid. And I know that I'm going to be a bit biased here, but I usually find that these are the best. And I don't just mean, any masterminds that I run. I also mean ones that I have and do pay for now. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So one, there are going to be, I should say this first. There are going to be paid masterminds that are not worth the money. That happens in all categories. But you are going to find some really, really good paid ones out there in just about any niche that you might be interested in. Typically, what you're going to find is there's someone in charge. So there's, someone who kind of directs how a mastermind is going to go. There's going to be rules. There should be some expectations. And the nice thing is, if it's paid, you can let them know just by leaving and not paying anymore that, it's no good. And you should be like, hey, listen, here's what's not being done right. You're actually doing the person who's running it a service. And so, like, when people do leave my VIP group or our VIP group, I actually ask on the way out, like, hey, here's the exit interview. What is it that we could do better? No judge, I'm not going to come back at you and be like, oh, well, you're stupid for telling me that. I actually want to know. Most of the time, either people are trying not to hurt my feelings, or they're being honest and saying, hey, it's not you, it's me. Which I hope is. I hope that people would be honest with me when I ask, but I think that's really important for a paid mastermind, is to try to learn and be better. But the reason I really like paid masterminds is there should be an expectation from the leaders. They need to be on the ball. They need to be willing to learn, to teach what they learn, and hopefully share whatever they can that will actually help members of the group grow. And it should be worth what you're paying to be there. It also makes you be a little bit more accountable. You typically pay attention when you're paying for something, or at least pay more attention. I've gotten tons of free books, and those tend to sit on the bookshelf a little bit longer than the ones that I actually pay for. And so I think paid masterminds are actually pretty good. But there's something even more important than the kind of mastermind that you join, in my opinion. And that's how you get the most out of any mastermind that you may join. So whatever you go into, whether it's a mastermind, a business, an event, or a course, I think that if you go in with an attitude, well, I better get my money's worth, or I really hope I didn't get scammed into buying this or something like that, you're probably going to go in a little bit cynical, and you may not get the most out of something. Now, I'm totally, if you don't, I'm totally okay with you being like, well, yeah, this was garbage. But you probably should try to go in expecting a 5-star experience. And I heard a story about, I actually think I may have told it once, about a guy who decided he was going to go to the DMV, and the DMV was he's like, this is going to be the best DMV experience of my entire life. And he goes in and he thinks about it before he goes in. He's like, everyone's going to be happy to see me. Everyone's going to want to help me really quickly and things like that. And he showed up expecting to have a 5-star service from a place that is typically the last place you ever want to go to. And sure enough, when he showed up, with a smile on his face and happy to be there, looking the employees in the eyes and saying hello and things like that, making small talk. Well, sure enough, he actually did get 5-star service. Everyone treated him really well. He actually got to skip the line, because he was nice and friendly, and just had a good personality about him. And sure enough, because he went in expecting it, well, he got it. And so I would suggest that whatever you join, don't half-ass it. Go in expecting that 5-star experience. Make sure that you put your best foot forward, and a lot of times that's going to be reciprocated to you a lot faster when you participate, you give back, and then you take action on the things that you learn or whatever skills that you take away from a mastermind. Have there been any? I don't know. Have there been any examples of masterminds or groups that you've joined that have just been like over the top, great for growth in either your business or personal life? And what kind of, what kind of things have they had in common?
The most common, the common denominator in the best mastermind groups are the ones where everyone checks their ego at the door. Mm-hmm. And which is basically just kind of summarizing what you just talked about. It's you leave your expectations, you leave them at the door when you walk in, and you just kind of, I think, combined with the fact that, because I'm often in groups that with people that are more successful than me, if you have no ego, but yet you still kind of value your input and your own perspective, and you just kind of lay it out objectively, and obviously you may get some criticism or constructive criticism and helpful tips and whatnot. I mean, if you're gracious about accepting that, it's going to build a camaraderie as you move forward in that mastermind, and I think everybody's going to get more out of it, if everybody's kind of on the level playing field, and you kind of accept that you guys are peers. I mean, the numbers may be a little bit different. Somebody's numbers may be a little bit higher, but essentially we're all in the same ball game, and we're all trying to accomplish the same goal, which is growth. No matter where your numbers are now, the one common thing that we're looking to do is make that number higher, no matter where it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess in summary, don't ever be afraid to join a mastermind, whether it's free or paid, but I would vet free ones a little bit more than I would actually vet paid masterminds. And the reason being is just because they can so easily get lax. And I guess the biggest form of mastermind would be Facebook groups. I've seen, I'm probably in 500 Facebook groups, and I bet you that 75% of them or more have just died, because that's just how people treat them. But masterminds overall are great, and don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't try to get into 10 or 15 of them. Really focus on maybe 1 or 3 at the most, and try to get everything you can out of those. Now I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about bottlenecks. So I shared a post in our VIP group this past week about bottlenecks. And I would love to be able to take credit for this idea myself, but it was actually kind of an amalgamation of several different things that I have read from people that I think are a lot smarter than me. And there was a quote I saw not too long ago. It was what was it called? I think it was, you learn through deconstruction and you teach through reconstruction, or something like that. I want to say it was a James Clear quote, of course.
Yeah, recombination, right?
Recombination, thank you. And so after reading a few things, I was kind of playing around with them, but here's what the post read. A framework to use as the operator in your business. One, find the bottleneck in your business. Two, solve that said bottleneck. And then three, repeat ad infinitum or forever. For those of you who don't know Latin, I mean, I'm not sure who doesn't know that. But if you have an Amazon business, some of the examples may be prep. And I think that you should understand Amazon terms and conditions and make sure that you are following the prep guidelines. But prep is not one of those jobs that actually pays in an Amazon business. So can this be hired out? Can you outsource prep in some way? Another example is repricing. If you're manually resetting prices a couple of times per day, or every few hours, or every, I don't know, half an hour, however often you're doing it, how much time are you spending on that? And if you move to a repricer, what's that actually going to cost you? Let's say, for example, that you make $20 an hour, and once per hour you're spending 15 minutes repricing. Well, I don't know what is that? $5? $5 an hour is what you're doing. What you're paying yourself to do that. You could pay for the most expensive repricer that I know at what, $350 a month to get started, I think, and it would still be less money per hour for your repricer to work for you. And then there are a lot of other bottlenecks in an Amazon business. And a friend of mine, who actually also happens to be named Chris, pointed out that one of the major bottlenecks in just about every business is the owner themselves. And after I talked myself down from being triggered by that comment, I realized he's right. I know that 80% of the time or more, I'm probably the biggest bottleneck in my own business, whether it's because I don't want to let go of something, or I worry that if I do outsource it, it's not going to be done quite as well. And that's something I still work on even now. And so I guess I want to talk a little bit about like some other bottlenecks, and maybe how we could solve them. So I guess, what are some bottlenecks that you see quite often, especially in the Amazon space? And then let's wrap a little bit about how we could, how you can get rid of them fairly easily.
Yeah, it's funny. I read your quote, and I was like that. And there was a similar one. Alex Hormozy actually tweeted something very similar. Just he switched up the terminology a little bit, but essentially it's the same thought. And then I realized that that's something. Some of the best moves that I've made in my business personally have used this framework, and I just had the terminology a little bit different. Instead of like calling it a bottleneck, I always referred to the things that I didn't like doing, because the things that I don't enjoy, that I don't like doing, I'm more prone to delay doing it, which is slowing down my process. I've told that story with my prep help that I have come once a week, and I can't, you'd be surprised at how much better in multiple facets I've gotten simply just out of 4 hours a week, just hiring someone to come polybag stuff and peel stickers off. And it's crazy. You'd think I was making it up if I actually ran the numbers and showed you a sheet, but prep, that's a huge one, it really didn't take much. I know some people make a big deal about it and like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to hire a neighborhood kid, and they might steal from me, and everybody's always afraid of having things stolen, or like finding out what you're selling, and
yeah, they're gonna learn exactly what I do, and they're gonna go do it themselves.
Right? Yeah, that's yeah. I don't. Which maybe that's a separate topic, but yeah, the fear is a little bit much for the benefit that you could have by getting over that fear. That it far outweighs any risks that you'd be taking on there. Yeah, you mentioned repricing. That's one of those. I've said it before, but I have a list of these things that I classified as kind of like turnstile services, and a repricer is definitely one, where once you get through that turnstile, there's no going back. I mean, it's just so much better than the alternative. You can't unwind a repricer once you get it. It's far too valuable.
Yeah.
No matter what you pay, I mean, like you said, even the most expensive ones, if you really broke it down, you were honest about it, you're getting your money's worth. Another bottleneck, may be if retail arbitrage is a significant portion of your business, you can actually outsource the shopping. If you have a list of replens and I'm going to this store and I'm picking up these 5 to 10 items, and you're not necessarily scanning, you're not looking for, you have enough to do and that, just grab my replens and I'm out. That can be outsourced. You can do something else while you pay somebody a decent wage to do that. And you're going to end up a net gain in the end if you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. So I want to touch on the, they're going to learn my business and they're going to go do it themselves thing really quick. Because I've heard that said, got to be a dozen times. If I bring someone in, they're going to learn exactly what I do and they're going to go do it themselves. And that might be true. Some people might actually do that. But then I go back and I think, well, how did you learn about Amazon? Did you go and do prep work for somebody and then you learned their business and started your own? No, probably not. I'm guessing like most people, you saw a video on YouTube or you saw a post on social media and then you started digging in a little bit and you find some Facebook groups and you find some more people on YouTube and then you figure it out. So, I mean, the information is out there. There really aren't any secrets anymore. Everything's on the internet. So if someone actually wanted to start a business, they would do it. But what we've got to realize is that, well, heck, I wish I knew the number. I don't know what the number is, but I would imagine that somewhere pretty close to like 80% of people don't want their own business. Or at most, maybe they want a side hustle. And for them, a side hustle might be Uber Eats or, Postmates or whatever, rather than the stress of actually like having an actual business. I don't think that's a good excuse anymore.
No, it's funny. I just read the chapter yesterday. I'm reading How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis.
Right there. It's good.
Oh, there it is. It is good. And he reads the audiobook on Audible himself, and it's like having the whole book read to you by the Geico lizard.
Oh man, now I'm gonna have to go buy the Audible.
Oh, it's so good. He hasn't told me how much I'll save on car insurance yet, but I just read the chapter on. He was talking about his VP that was with him for such a long time, right? And it's before he moved to the U.S. Before he had an operation, he was still over in England. And he basically makes the point of when you're looking to hire people and you find a good one, you basically accept the fact that they're going to move on. So once you find a good one, treat them right, pay them well for as long as you have them. But know that there's going to be a sunset. It's just and you should want that. You should want your best employees to go off and do their own thing. because the contributions that they're making while you're there, it's worth it. It's a positive overall. And he talks about the VP actually was going to move to the United States, got a job offer from some big, I don't know if I want to say he was in the recording industry or something, like Geffen Records or something offered him a position, and the position was VP, and this person really wanted to move to the United States anyway. So Felix Dennis, who had nothing in the U.S. at all, said, well, how about how'd you like to be president of the U.S. operations? And he says, well, Felix, you don't have U.S. operations. He goes, I will now, and he, so he said something, and he goes, well, where are we going to be located? And what are we going to do in the U.S.? And Felix Dennis goes, I don't know. You're the president. So he created that, he made this position, and so sure, it wasn't ideal for Felix Dennis, because that was expansion before he was ready to do it, but it bought him more time with an invaluable employee. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. He expanded his business, but it was in the hands of someone he trusted, which is good for his business overall. And then eventually this person, moved on to greener pastures, but his footprints were all over his business.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if I know that we haven't done a book recommendation for a while, but if I know that this is a really clickbait title, How to Get Rich.
Yeah.
But this guy, he's fascinating. He's interesting. He's a good writer. He's the founder of Maxim magazine and several other magazines that you probably never heard of. One of the first, I think it was actually the second computer magazine in the UK, personal computer magazine, because he got talked out of it, and then he saw someone else launch, and he's like, "Oh no, I gotta shoot my shot," and so he ended up doing it. But also lived a fascinating life. I know he talks about hanging out with the Beatles, before they were big and famous, and a bunch of other rock stars and stuff. And so, really, really interesting fella.
Yeah, I love the Neil Tennant story when he was working at the magazine, and he said, he goes, hey, I'm going to quit and go do my own thing, and he's like, oh no, come on, stay, and he's trying to talk him out of it, and it turns out it's Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop Boys.
Yes.
All right, pretty good decision, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that was really good. But go grab yourself a copy of How to Get Rich, because it's worth the read. All right, let's switch gears again to learning new things. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is I thought that Chris had shared this because it was a brilliant find, but apparently I shared it. But there was a really great post up on Twitter, and it's from Robert Greene. And if you're not familiar with Robert Greene, he's the author of the book like 48 Laws of Power. I think he did the 50th Law with 50 Cent, Mastery, and there's a bunch of others. And I know that some people kind of have mixed reviews about the guy, but I find him really fascinating. And he was kind of a mentor for one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, which probably gives him a little bit more street cred in my book. I'll admit to that. But his post was that if you're going to learn new things, you must avoid at all costs the idea that you can manage learning several skills at a time. You need to develop your powers of concentration and understand that trying to multitask will be the death of the process. And I know that we've talked about multitasking here on the pod before and how much of a killer it actually is. But as I get a little bit older, I realize like how much truth there is in this. I really did used to think I could take in several new skills at once. And that usually resulted in me being mediocre at those skills at best. Like I know that some of the skills I tried to learn in tandem, I can't do anymore. I can still play chopsticks on the piano, but I can't play a chord on a guitar to save my life. I also cannot carry a tune in a bucket if I had to. But I've really been trying to get better at this, especially recently. And at first, it doesn't feel good. Uh, One, probably because I'm riddled with what I imagine is a little bit of ADD. But two, I don't feel like I'm necessarily getting as much done when I'm just trying to focus on learning one thing. So, for example, I've been trying to learn a new piece of software and get really good at it so that I can turn around and actually teach it. And it's made me put off doing a few other things, for this. And it feels like I'm slowing down, uh, but I know that I need to slow down to speed up, which, may not make a lot of sense, but that's what you got to do. Uh, and I don't know. How do you manage this in your life? Because I know you're like me, and you'll be reading, 2 or 3 books, and 25 podcasts and all that stuff. So I guess how do you do it, especially when you want to master something new?
Well, it can be tough. It's interesting that there's kind of the general public, the general population is kind of shifting the mindset. I don't think we're fully there, but multitasking used to be the thing. It used to be something that you were proud of. It used to be something that you bragged about. It used to be, a word that you threw into job interviews, every chance you got, but there's actually like scientific evidence coming out that multitasking is not productive. It's actually less productive than focusing on one single task at a time until completion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's similar to how hustle culture, that was the buzzword, working these long hours and fingers to the bone and 7 days a week and whatnot. There used to be a pride attached to that. And luckily, especially for my lazy ass, we're moving away from that. We could throw it back to the last thing we talked about solving bottlenecks,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the keys that we were talking about with solving bottlenecks had to do with outsourcing, so it's like once you identify, something that you're trying to polish up, you really can't, it's best to delegate something that you know how to do intimately yourself. That's the best way to do it. You can't give a task to someone else that you don't know how to do yourself. That's just a recipe for disaster. So, and we've talked about it before, or I've talked about it, about how I'm trying to, experiment and learn more about flow, to where if I actually get into a productive phase on whatever task that I'm in, I'm going to let that go, while I'm focused, and I kind of
Mm-hmm.
just ride that wave until I'm done. And then when it's time to take a break or, get up from the computer and, then I can sit down and take on another task. But, I think it has to do with kind of swallowing your pride and asking for help when you need it. Like we said before, the stuff you don't like to do, if there's a way to not grind it out and be miserable, take that option, go that route, get the help that you need or outsource, certain tasks. Another bottleneck we didn't talk about was reimbursements and stuff, like somebody else can
Oh
do
yeah.
that. It's we as far as like outsourcing and the bottlenecks, we talk about it in kind of the value of our time, but it's also our focus. Like if you're trying to learn new skills and you can only do one thing at a time, you're gonna have a much easier time learning stuff that you actually enjoy and
Mm-hmm.
things that you're interested in. those are the easiest ones to learn. It's similar to a to-do list. So, a lot of people in the mornings, you grab the to-do list and you do the easiest task first, and that way you cross one off, and you get a small win, and you move on from there. That sort of strategy, it's easier if you do something that you don't despise. If you can do it quickly, do it efficiently, and you kind of enjoy it, you're off to a good start, and you can kind of you can fire off a bunch of different tasks, even though you're only doing one thing at a time.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know, the way that things are shifting has been fascinating. Like you brought up, multitasking would be something you bring up in a job interview maybe 10 years ago, and now you might bring up, oh, I'm really good at like deep work, and you're like, oh, that's awesome,
Yep.
But yeah, it's fascinating how that, and probably changing for the better. I think it's been nice to see so much research done on it and actually kind of pushing us in the right direction. Be interesting to see where we are in the next 5 years. So, anything? It's actually a fairly short episode. Anything we missed or should have covered?
No, did you see any of this backlash on Malcolm Gladwell? Did you hear what he said?
Yes. He took something sacred and bashed it. I know that he said he's not a fan of work from home, and he thinks that it's kind of BS. But yeah, I don't know. That's not what I expected him to say, to be quite honest.
No. If you read the actual quote, and this is another one of those things where, if you're only reading the headlines, you're going to have a negative outlook on Malcolm Gladwell after you're done. But if you really look at what he was talking about, he's talking about the social aspect of working in an office, which I get. We've had discussions about, the solopreneur, who's, sitting at home day in, day out behind your computer. There is a certain, social aspect that is big time missing, so it's important to get out. And that's another part of what makes Masterminds so great is, talking to your peers, and just kind of bouncing ideas off of, it's as much productive as it is a social exercise.
Oh yeah.
So, I know what he was saying. I think the quotes that they took from it were a little bit unfortunate. And overall, I disagree. I mean, clearly I'm working from home. I quit my office job and I work from home. And so does he for, a significant portion of his career. And there are tons of people that came out and said, I swear I could have saw him. I swear I saw him for hours at the coffee shop, using our Wi-Fi. But it hurts my heart, to hear negativity. And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole. There are a bunch of people bashing Malcolm Gladwell. I hate. I mean, I love the guy personally. I
do too.
I'm not afraid to admit it. I think a lot of the sampling of the negative comments that I saw seemed to be a little generic. I'm not sure they were the gloves were all the way up. Some of these comments, but yeah, if you just check it out, see he raised a little bit of a shitstorm with what he said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I do disagree. I think work from home is fine, but he is 100% right about the social aspect, and yeah. I mean, I don't know if there have been any studies done about the rise in, and we're gonna really start going down a rabbit trail here. So you guys are gonna get to see some of our unfiltered stuff, but I don't know if there's been a study done with correlation of, a move to work from home and depression rates or anything like that. I know that depression and things like that has been on the rise over, ever since COVID and lockdowns and things like that. But I don't know if that's, is it because you're working from home or is it because you are now like working at an office was really the only social outlet for you. Uh, and if that's the case, I mean, it's a little hard to force people to be social if they're not going, if they're not going into an office. So if there is a correlation, I'm not sure how to fix that. I know that for me, I've got a 9-year-old who comes into the office on a fairly regular basis, and I've got a wife who comes in here and tells me to get out of the office and come hang out. So that's how I stay social a little bit. But and I know you've got rugrats running around too that kind of help. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Maybe the people that are depressed are finding out that they don't like their family as much as they thought they did. Maybe that's but there's two sides to every story. Sometimes three, right? your side, my side, then the truth. But the thing to remember about all this work from home stuff is we were winging it. We were doing all this on the fly. I'll tell you one thing that's going to come out as far as a positive result for these businesses is think about how much real estate and the expenses associated with it that they really, if they're being honest with themselves, they don't really need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some serious cost cutting that companies could benefit from. So and I'm not totally convinced that you can't if we really thought about it and kind of took our time instead of being reactionary about it, that you couldn't make a pleasant experience for work from home. I think there's plenty of aspects on it, that companies could get behind it.
I mean, I can't remember who it was I was reading about, but one company shut down one of their offices in New York City recently. I would imagine that rent, because it wasn't a small office, it housed like 500 or 1,000 people. So I'm guessing in New York City, that's got to be $1 million a month, lease on a building. And you think about like Salesforce, they've got Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, and that's like $1 billion building. And I know that they're not going to get rid of it, but if everybody went remote and now they've got $1 billion building just sitting there, well, they're still carrying costs and things like that. But sure, at least the air conditioning bill is a lot lower.
Right.
But yeah,
was it Uber that was building that new headquarters in San Francisco? And I think so. They bailed on it. Like they didn't even finish the building. Like, somebody crunched some numbers and said, no, let's stop here and call the whole thing off.
And that's so crazy. I guess there is a bit of a two edges to that sword. One, like, can you imagine how much is saved? And, I'm sure that some people would rather that money go to the employees or things like that, although it'll probably go to the bottom line. But what happens to real estate magnates and real estate developers? Are they going to have to find a new line of work? It's curious, but
they might be forced to solve the homeless problem. But we could throw it back to, again, this is a huge commercial for Felix Dennis, but throw it back to his advice. A lot of this stuff, as far as like real estate and whatnot, like, Salesforce Tower, right? Like you brought that up. Now I'm willing to bet that, a tower, a little bit is a little showy,
sure.
It's probably more, it's probably more of a building than they actually needed, and, Felix Dennis actually covers that. He said, what, if you're trying to start a business, go bare bones. He goes, pay yourself enough to eat. That's it. And then if there's more, you'll have more later. But as far as like, if you're just starting out, pay yourself just enough to eat. He goes, do not pay for any extravagance as far as like an office or any, I mean, unless you're actually meeting with clients and you need to have that physical presentation, because if you don't you dare even think about paying anything. You know, like he snuck into an abandoned building when he started his first and it was Lemmy from Motorhead that told him about it. You know, it was just this abandoned building and that Lemmy knew about. Go figure. But you know, it didn't even have a roof in all the rooms. He said, you know, some of them you could look straight up through at the sky in some of these, but it was free. They moved in. There was, you know, there apparently no issues, and they got away with it as long as they didn't tell anybody that they were using it as an office. It worked, you know. So, you know, maybe a lot of these businesses, maybe the lesson with this real estate as they're kind of reassessing things, maybe they forgot some of these lessons, you know, that you know, maybe they were you know, the expense accounts were a bit excessive when they didn't need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we probably talk about this for quite some time, but we probably should wrap up here. I know that so next week we're going to be talking about Q4, and I know you did the math a little bit earlier, but by the time we release the episode, there's only going to be like what 38 days. Yeah. So going to be just a little over a month until Q4 when we release our Q4 episode. And we really want to talk about how to get ready for Q4 and make sure that you're primed to take advantage of it as much as you can, because it's going to be here. I mean, back to school has come and gone already, and Q4 is going to be here really, really quickly. Want to make sure that you guys are able to get the most out of it. So if you have a Q4 specific question, please make sure to shoot it to us in an email. We'll cover it in the episode. You can send it to chris@cleartheshelf.com or hit either of us up on social media, which is going to be linked down in the show notes, and we'll make sure to discuss it on the next podcast. But I think this next one will be fun because Q4 can be a fun time of year. So, Chris, thanks for hanging out, man. I appreciate you as always.
Good to see you.
And good to see you too. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, and do a solid. Share this with your friends. Hit the like button or drop a comment below. Let us know what you thought. And we appreciate you. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.